Hey, what's going on, everybody? Pastor Dave here from Millenium Baptist Church, here with my esteemed colleague, Pastor Bob Erbig, as usual, and we are happy to be with you again today on Behind the Pulpit. We got a great show for you today, and lots going on in the news. We have a wonderful culmination of our series through the book of Revelation happening right now. We've got the great book war that is ongoing, and lots of stuff happening in the body life. So we have a wonderful program for you. But first of all, I wanted to announce the fact that I have a wonderful gift here that came into my presence this past week. Pastor Bob, can you see how big this is? It doesn't look as big on the TV cameras as I was kind of
That is a massive
hoping.
mug. If you're having that, that's like a 30-ounce coffee.
Hold it up
right
to
there.
your face.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
this
Here's my
is
hand.
like,
My hands aren't as big. Look at how big this thing is.
you could get caffeinated.
I need
with
two
this one,
hands to
man.
carry that thing.
And then inside of it is a little gift there, a little guy who's also has a little Reese's bow tie there. So, hey, thank you very much, John. Appreciate the shout out.
That's
And,
wonderful. Well, how did you feel when you received this? It feels like it would have made your day.
I feel like I'm ready for some eggnog or something
Eggnog?
Christmassy.
It
you
says
know?
Reese's.
Yeah.
You know they make Reese's hot chocolate.
Maybe I'll get some Reese's hot chocolate going on in here with some marshmallows on top or something
Wow.
awesome. But hey, we are ready to roll. I understand that you also have
Best
a
Christmas gift ever, right?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay.
I understand you also have something that came into your office last week from
I do.
similar
John was
generous-
making the rounds. John apparently he stopped by, gave you the Reese's, and then
What'd you get?
he blessed me
It's
with
an early Christmas here.
It
at
was an
Millenium
early
Baptist
Christmas. He blessed me with a Star Wars communicator right here. This is to another Star Wars
Church.
fan.
Communicator.
Although I guess I communicate the Star Wars more than you, because I know you like Star Wars too. But yeah, it was a communicator. But here's the cool thing: it's a toy. So I go with my BB-8 thing. And it had all this chains of things, and I'm trying to picture when this thing was made, because here's the technology. Basically, you turn this thing on. Let me see if I can let you guys see it. You turn it on.
Oh, I like
Okay,
it
it's
already.
on, and then each one of these things has a character from the, like, here's a Darth Vader one, and you go and you put it over this button, and it says a line from the movie.
What have you done with those guns?
Maybe that wasn't the Darth Vader one.
Disturbing.
Darth Vader's on here, but it doesn't sound like him, right? How about the? Oh, here's the Princess.
No, that
Leia
was
one.
him. It said something about "I find your lack of faith disturbing" or
Mm-hmm.
something.
I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board. Would somebody get this big walking carpet out of my way?
There you go.
Oh, there's multiple lines.
Multiple ones.
Each
I don't
one's
know how many multiple ones there are, but yeah. So that was very cool. Thank you, John. I have to go
That's
home and show
pretty
my kids.
awesome.
I didn't have time this weekend, but I will.
Well,
So,
Tim,
there you go.
I sent you an email. I don't know if you got a chance to check that, but I wanted to throw in our chart sighting early this
Oh
week.
my goodness!
I've got a chart
Couldn't
sighting
contain himself.
that you might find interesting, or maybe you can like critique this chart. I'm not sure if it's totally perfect because I'm not an expert, but I have a chart sighting that's non-theological this week. There's nothing about premillennialism, amillennialism. There's nothing about postmillennialism. It's just
Where
simply
did you find this?
it's something I saw on social media that I thought was really, really clear, and it's color coded. So you'll notice the chart just basically gives you the whole timeline, and it goes all the way back to at least the beginning of the Star Wars universe. So the white and black are the live action films. The yellow is the animated shows, and then the red is the live action shows, and then the purple is the video games. So I don't know. Anyway, so
This requires commitment to actually know if this timeline is correct.
yeah, man, I don't know. I
So-
can tell you a couple things are right, but I don't know if I can verify everything there.
So I've seen, obviously, all the main movies. I've watched a little bit of the Clone Wars. I've not watched The Acolyte. Actually, I heard that was absolutely awful. So I haven't watched that.
you heard it here first, folks.
Rogue One, Solo, all, kind of these original kind of side stories I've seen. Mm-hmm. This Skeleton Crew thing is new. I haven't watched that. Yeah, but I mean that seems about right. The Clone Wars
Close.
is actually very good. I do like the Clone Wars, that animated show. And then
what's going on with Mandalorian? Is that over, or is that like still making
That's a good question. I've heard
episodes?
different things about it being maybe they're going to do a feature film like for the next thing. But
Okay.
I haven't been looking at the news on that. And I should go Google tonight and see what they're saying.
Yeah, Michaela and I were enjoying that series, and we weren't clear if it was over or not. So
It is unclear, right?
yeah. But Boba Fett came out. Have you tried out that one?
No, I
No,
just kind of
okay.
stopped with the Mandalorian.
I was thinking maybe over Christmas break, Michaela and I might try Boba Fett.
I did think I have the one animated one I haven't watched that I thought would be interesting is the Star Wars Rebels, which is kind of like in between
Right.
Return of the Jedi and the sequels, and Ahsoka Tano plays a big role in there. I did watch the Ahsoka series. I think that was on there, and that was okay.
So I thought that was a pretty cool chart. Somebody with some time put together the timeline.
Somebody that's a keyword. Somebody with time,
Yeah.
sat down and created this Star Wars chart.
All
Yeah.
right, so we're going to go straight to our segment where we discuss what's going on in the news here this week, because there's a lot of stories that we wanted to talk about.
There's a plethora of stories.
Here's what's going on in the news. All right, Pastor Bob. First things first.
I sent you a list of about 6 things. What a week, Pastor Dave.
Yes.
What a week.
There's a lot, but let's just start with the hometown concerns. So every night, right after the sun goes down, which is really early in December, so 5 p.m. and beyond, you look up in the sky, and there's the green light and the red light, and they're blinking, and you see these very quiet aircrafts. Some like to identify them as UFOs, unidentified flying objects. These drones,
UAPs,
are,
unidentified aerial phenomenon. I think that's the new,
All right.
the new thing.
yeah, whatever they call them, they're up there, and there's at least half a dozen every single night flying right above my house. And in Hunterdon County, where I live, they're all over the place. So last night we were in downtown Flemington going out to dinner for my sister-in-law's birthday. There was a big drone flying right over the restaurant. It was, I'd say, at least 6 feet in diameter, maybe 8 feet, like as small.
I
not
will
like
say
a tiny little drone like we have at Millington. We
Right,
have like little drone.
right.
We're talking like the size of like maybe your Subaru. Like it's a big old thing up there. So what's going on? This has been in the headlines, and specifically New Jersey seems to have a lot of these drones flying. Are you seeing these drones?
I will say last night I saw one that could have also been a plane. So I haven't seen them like you've seen them over your house, although I've heard other people in Basking Ridge have seen them. And I did not know about this until Friday. You sent me that news story, and then I started to look into it, and I saw some of the theories on social media, and I was like, what is going on? And now it's starting to make its way into the mainstream. Apparently, it's been happening since November 18th.
Yeah, it's been a couple of
This
weeks
is like almost
of
a
this.
month of this thing.
Here's the headline story from the New York Times. The New York Times.
The New York Times,
Okay.
yeah.
Headline: Unidentified drones light up New Jersey's skies, baffling residents. People across the state have reported seeing scores of large, low-flying objects in recent weeks. Officials haven't said where they're coming from or why they're here. Yet on Friday, Governor Murphy put out a statement that there's nothing to be afraid of, there's nothing to be concerned about, everything's fine, there's no threat. But there was no explanation either as to what they are. As far as I know, there hasn't been a real problem with them, although there was a helicopter issue where somebody was being medevaced, and apparently one of these drones was within the path and actually disturbed the process of getting this person where they needed to go for medical care. So what's your theory, man? What's going on with these drones? Who's flying these drones? Is this some kind of conspiracy from some other international government, or is this just a bunch of high school kids trying to make us feel like we're scared for no reason? What's going on?
Well, I definitely don't think it's just a bunch of high school kids. It is bizarre. Let's just say that it's very bizarre. Why New Jersey? It's the growing counties, and the concern I think was initially I think they started to show up in Morris County up by Tim's house, where he lives, and there is a military installation up there, the Picatinny Arsenal. And then they were showing up in the south, and we have McGuire Air Force Base in the south, and then we have there's a base over in Monmouth County. So are these like a U.S. government thing that they're testing out, which is weird, but I suppose that could be one. But then I was reading about people that were searching over the sea, like we're not sure where they're coming from. Why do they just come out at night? Like they're not here during the day, but at dusk every night, people are looking up. Oh, they're starting to appear.
So that's what I was wondering, because the lights are clear at night. Are they up there during the day and we're just not noticing? I don't know, but I only see them after dark. And remember the Google cars that were driving all over the United States taking pictures? Well, I thought maybe there's some sort of program where they're getting footage or something for some sort of maps on the internet, but that wouldn't make sense if they're doing it during the dark. Like they would do that during the day, where they could take good video footage of what's going on. So that theory didn't make sense to me. I do know that they have banned drones from flying over the Trump owned.
That's right. Trump's golf course is right here too,
here in central New Jersey. So that's something. But hey, let us know, what is your theory about the drones?
Well, I do have. Obviously, there also is a theory that these are aliens, which. Maybe we could talk about what our feelings theologically are on that. But I did want to make one other thought that is going to go in with the book recommendation I'll give you later. So let's say they're not the alien thing, not to chase down that. But there is a book by Hugh Ross, and I talked about this when you were on sabbatical because there was all the UFO hearings in Congress back then. And his theory on this is all the UFOs are actually spiritual beings. That every time you hear about a UFO or this and that, like there's something weird about them. They're like defying physics. And his theory is that they're actually transdimensional beings, maybe spiritual beings, demonic in nature. So, not to be totally freaky about that, but has anybody actually seen these things? Maybe it's some kind of spiritual incursion from a different dimension. Which I don't think is totally crazy.
Let the record show that when Pastor Dave goes on sabbatical, things get a little weird around here.
Talked to a lot of aliens when you're on sabbatical.
Pastor Bob
Dave
loses a certain filtration system when I'm not in the room.
That was it was in the news, Pastor Dave. It was in the news.
Right.
That's what we talked about.
I was watching those congressional hearings too. It was an interesting story.
But this was he's actually written a book about it, and it's interesting. So
speaking of the spiritual realm, you and I have been chatting about this story about Tucker Carlson.
Oh, I forgot about that one too.
He is publicly declaring that he had some sort of incident occur to him when he was in bed with his family and a few dogs, I think, evidently sleeping in the bed with him, where he felt like he was being attacked.
I don't know if they were in the bed, but they were maybe in the room.
In the room? Okay, my bad. So I don't know exactly that, but he said he felt like he was being attacked while he was sleeping, and some sort of restraining behavior or like choking behavior was occurring to him. And he thought it was a dream, but then he woke up and he realized that he actually had physical signs of some sort of altercation and claw marks like underneath of his, like around his ribs or something. And he feels like something in the spiritual realm was attacking him. And so he publicly has told this story, and he believes that he was mauled by a demon. And people with a totally materialistic, naturalistic, secular framework do not have any explanation for this.
He said he called up his one evangelical Christian friend, and they said, "Oh yeah, that happens," and he was like, "What? That happens?"
Wait. I got to get on the phone with an evangelical and find out what kind of situation this is, right? And so that was an interesting story from the spiritual realm. And so in the Bible, at times there's this crossover from the spiritual realm to the material realm. It's rare, but it does happen, right? Like, so in the Old Testament, we have angels that are somehow eating like real food, which is interesting. Somehow they manifested themselves in a physical form and ate, like with Abraham. And then in the New Testament, you have like a couple demonization passages where there's a boy who's like mute. And it's not just a physical malady. There's some sort of demonic presence that's causing him not to be able to speak. And I've heard stories of how people have felt constrained in their speech at night and thought that there was some sort of spiritual warfare going on there, which, maybe that's a possibility. So certainly the Bible does allow room for that kind of interactivity between that realm.
I was
and
watching
this realm.
a Doug Reacts video on this, Doug Wilson, and he made the claim that this is actually kind of a phenomenon that's been recounted throughout church history, this idea of waking up and, kind of breathless and stuff like that. So, yeah.
And, of course, the advice is that we don't have the power in our own spiritual strength to fight off a spiritual being like that, but Jesus does. And so call out in Jesus' name, and spirits stand at attention because of the authority of Christ. So that's our advice to you. But what a weird story, and what an interesting story to go public.
We got a lot
about.
of weird things going on. I mean, it's been a weird year, Pastor Dave.
We thought about
weird
just having
year.
a weird in the news segment.
I thought we
for
were
the
just
whole
going to
show.
have like a nice Christmas, and all of a sudden we got just things that keep coming up. Speaking of, on national geopolitical issues, how about the toppling of the Assad regime in Damascus?
Big news.
Talking about biblical
coming out this weekend.
stories.
Here's the headline from BBC. The fall of Assad and the future of Syria dominate the newspapers. Syria's rebel army ousts Assad. Assad falls, but what now? The fall of Assad. Rebels declare victory for Islamic Nation as Bashar al-Assad flees Syria and regime collapses. So this was in the news maybe 10 years ago. It was very concerning about the incidences around Aleppo when Barack Obama was president. There was supposed to be a bright yellow line around chemical warfare, and then when Assad used chemical warfare against his people, we didn't intervene at that point, so that was a very controversial headline. Syria has kind of, I guess, not been a front page story for a while, but this is a pretty big deal. And
It's not been, but they, you mentioned back in the Obama administration, but it's been a mess for years, for decades. So it's not surprising, but it's obviously been a mess. And now, the question, what now? I mean, Israel, I heard, has moved troops up towards the Golan Heights, and then I heard people saying today maybe Russia's going to come in and stabilize because they have a connection with them. It's very interesting.
right, so there's kind of the Russia, Iran, Syria,
North Korea,
there's
China.
There's an alliance there that's weakening, maybe you could say. So Assad was granted asylum in Russia, and what's next? It appears to be a different radical Islamic group that's going to be seizing power in Syria, and the United States is wondering, so how are we going to be relating to that new governmental system? Is that going to be threatening to us and our allies, or is this going to be a more friendly regime, or what's next for Syria?
Well, I think the bigger thing, too, for the church to think about is the Syrian Christians, and there was news about that a number of years ago, but Assad kind of left them alone, and now the concern is that they might face some serious persecution from whoever's going to take over. If it's an Islamic militant group, they may start going about chasing down and killing Christians in Syria. So we should be praying for the church and our Christian brothers and sisters in Syria.
Absolutely. That's a good word. So the other story that you talked about in your sermon around this idea of are we living in apocalyptic times is there was a tragedy this past week in New York City. And
this was also extremely weird, Pastor Dave.
I saw this, and
very
I'm
weird.
going, what? And they had video footage from a security camera of basically the CEO of United Healthcare just being shot at point-blank range in the middle of New York City as he was visiting there for some kind of conference or something like that. And then there looked like there was another witness, and then the shooter evidently got on some kind of rental electric bike thing, and they haven't been able to find him.
There's been a manhunt all over New York City. They think maybe he left and went to Atlanta.
It's fascinating.
It's a real hunt. It's crazy that I guess crazy, but also maybe thankful that we don't surveil every single person like they do in other countries. But also in this moment, you wish you could find this person who committed this murder.
Yeah, scary times. Tim, you're fascinated by this story, you said?
Yeah, I just think it's kind of crazy in today's day and age that we haven't been able to find this dude. And I feel like this guy might have been like a professional hit, or this guy has some sort of background where he's done this before. Because you see all these stories like this guy, he had a whole different outfit. He calmly left the scene on a city bike and he went into the city, the park, and he just disappeared. And no one knows where he is. They think he's gone. They think he left the city. He could be anywhere now. They said it's like a worldwide manhunt now, not just New York City. It's pretty crazy. It's like something out of a movie.
Wow.
They need to call up Jason Bourne and get him to chase him down.
So a lot happening in the headlines this week, Pastor Bob.
It was quite the week, Pastor. And that's not all, but I mean, maybe we'll stop there. But it's been a crazy week. I thought we were going to have a docile Christmas this year, and apparently not.
No. So how do you digest your news? Have I asked you this before? Because there's like a lot of headlines to keep up with and stories that we have to figure out how to process. What do you have like an eclectic way of collecting your news on a daily basis, or do you have like one particular source you like to go to, or how do you manage all this?
I have maybe one or two that are like so I do think, some of the social media stuff, I'll see things that are getting pinned out there, and then I'll go and see the other news sources and see if are these things picking them up right now. So yeah, I have a couple. I don't look at like 10 or 20. So I have a couple, and then if this is interesting and I want to hear maybe a different perspective, I'll go and find one that's on the opposite side.
Yeah,
like maybe my third tier of sources.
Right. I like to listen to the briefing every morning. I listen to that on 1.5 speed, though, because sometimes Mueller takes a long time to explain his way through a story.
Right.
And I also just have the BBC app, so I'm sort of constantly monitoring that. But it's hard to keep up. There's a lot going on. So
and things change.
I wonder, what's your favorite way to digest the news? How do you guys figure out?
I do listen to the
drop a comment.
Podcasts. Yeah.
Drop a comment in the. We'd love to hear ways you can manage that.
Oh, I do have a number of podcasts that I listen to as well. I forgot about that. So, yeah. I listen to Al Mohler as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is our In the News segment, and we've now reached the point of our show where we have a bristling competition going on, and it's neck and neck. I believe the score might be tied at this point, and we're going to try to
Pastor Dave
figure out how to put some air between these two sides. We're going to try to figure out how to who's gonna be up in the game after today.
I think these if that's your choice over there, these options are going to be diametrically opposed. We're going to see what Tim.
Pastor Dave, I gave you a golden platter yesterday to take the lead, and I don't think you took it. So
what was the golden platter?
I asked him if he had a copy of a book that I'm going through with some people that my Amazon's not coming through for me until the end of the month. So I asked him if he had a copy.
I forgot about that.
So that was a golden opportunity.
Yeah, you know what?
Well, you know what? That's what it's like. Somebody could have moved in for checkmate, and they make the wrong move.
I realized it this morning. I was like, I could have just given him the lead here.
I think I might have blown that, Tim. I didn't grab it, but
that's all right.
Tim asked me yesterday if I had a copy of Bonhoeffer's Cost of Discipleship, which I do, and you're more than welcome to. But
I also have a copy, Tim. Just
that
so you know.
is not the book I was thinking this
We're
morning.
arguing
For the Bonhoeffer series. I have the
my
whole Bonhoeffer collection.
Borrow my copy. Borrow my copy.
I tried to entice Tim in a different way today. So occasionally, there's a book that's so good that you finish the last page and a tear comes to your eye. You put it down and you go, I got to come back to this. I got to read it again. And it's one of those books where if you actually are at the bookstore or at like a book table or somewhere and you see a copy of the same book, you might actually get another copy of that book just so that you can give it away to somebody. And that's the case with the book that I'm going to recommend with you today. So this book that I'm going to recommend, Tim, whether or not you choose to allow me to win this is dependent upon whether or not I just give this to you right now. This is my extra copy. So, Tim, this is yours if you give me the point. That's my bribe. So it is Dane Ortland's book called Gentle and Lowly. It is based off the scripture verse in Matthew chapter 11 where, of course, Jesus describes himself. It's the only place in the Bible that describes the heart of Jesus as gentle and lowly. Matthew 11, come to me, all who are labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. For I am gentle and lowly in heart, and my yoke is easy, my burden is light. So this is a book that actually is a recap or a summary of a Puritan author named Goodwin, Thomas Goodwin, where he has a treatise on God's love for us and God's heart for both sufferers and sinners. And Dane Ortland put this out a couple of years ago. I went through it with a good friend of mine who's an accountability partner together. And we just took it slow, one chapter a week, and discussed what we were thinking. And I thought it was so good that I will read it again. I'll come back to it. It is worth every penny. And in this case, Tim, that would be 0 pennies for you if you'd like to choose Gentle and Lowly.
Wow.
Dane Ortland. But guys, seriously, if you're looking for a good devotional book, this one's fantastic, and it really describes the heart of God for people like you and for me. You'll be blessed by that, regardless of whether or not I get a point today. This is worth you picking up. There's my book, Bob.
Well, actually, I was going to say we did see Dane Ortland at a conference a couple months ago. He was there, or I think you left. You missed him being on the panel, but he did. He was there at the Westminster Preaching Conference.
Had to go. Yeah.
He spoke Tuesday night, but then he was part of the panel later in the day on Wednesday. But I think you had to. It was good. I would have be interested in hearing his actual talk from the conference, but the panel discussion was interesting.
Yep. All right. We've heard some other Ortlands enter into the book war. I know Bob did a Gavin Ortland thing about the triage thing a couple weeks ago.
I did. How many Ortlands are there? There's quite a few Ortlands.
Dane, and then their dad, Mr. Ortland.
Ray Ortland, and then their grandfather, Ray Ortland Sr., was also well known. I
didn't know that.
Ray Ortland Sr., their dad is Ray Ortland Jr. Both of them were well known, I think, in the PCA.
Okay.
And then Dane and Gavin, and I think
goodness.
there might be a third.
Oh, my word.
Dane, Gavin, and maybe there's somebody else.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, quite the family tree.
It is. Ortland. Check them out. Okay, so my recommendation, as I alluded to before, so Hugh Ross is a guy who runs a ministry called Reasons to Believe. It's a scientific apologetic ministry. And as I mentioned, I think I talked about this before, this is a book called Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men.
It's a great title.
A Rational Look at UFOs and Extraterrestrials by Hugh Ross, Kenneth Samples. Given all the talk around these drones in the New Jersey area. But check, how do you, I want to read it just based on that cover right there. So I thought I'd entice Tim to do this since he's up by the Arsenal up there. But like I said before, his basic argument is that these are spiritual issues. These are spiritual beings, and any encounters with UFOs, they don't have the remain, or at least they don't tell us they have the remains. So this is his argument. He's got another book called The Transdimensionality of God, so he sort of grounds this whole argument in that there is different dimensions, and these are spiritual beings that are kind of phasing in and phasing out of this other dimension. So if you're interested in, and he makes some scientific arguments in here about this, so if you're interested in that take on the whole situation, this is your book.
So, do you want to be freaked out and lose sleep, or would you like to rest your head on the pillow and sleep like a baby? That's the choice in the book wars tonight.
Wow.
What if I tell you I'll share this copy with you digitally?
Wow, we're throwing bribes
He's
out here.
saying I got a free book here. Here's a free book.
We are
How's
getting.
that
That's
work?
not fair.
Can you share it for free?
I'm getting.
I don't know, but I'll
here.
figure out a way.
He doesn't know.
I got blackmailed
You're
by
trying to-
Mrs. Tossi
Trying
yesterday.
to
That's-
email even
what a
the
work
ground.
environment. All right, so I have my decision, and I'll tell you what, man, this was hard. This was difficult because
Thought about it for a whole 30
the
seconds.
alien thing is fascinating, and but so is the option of getting a free book. And Pastor Dave, let me tell you, man, you don't need to give it to me for free because I already have it.
Oh, you do?
I already have the book.
He already has it. There you go.
I haven't read it yet. It's been
You can
on.
give it to Nikki.
It's been on my list. Well, she has it too because it's on our joint bookshelf. It's on the list. I wasn't sure when I was going to get to it, but you have convinced me to put it next on my list.
All right.
Pastor Dave has come all the way back
Wow.
to take the lead. If it's a book I already have, I feel like there is some sort of that I haven't read. I feel like there's some sort of like it's some cool.
I feel like we should talk about the rules
Calls to
here.
you.
I think there's been some bending of the rules
now we wanna,
the last few
Bob,
weeks.
you blew a 3-1 lead. Now we want to talk about the rules. Come on.
Don't call it a comeback.
I mean, I'm going to start coming in here and giving you free books. I guess that's the way to play. So we'll see. We'll see what
Now you
happens
got to
next
figure
week.
out what books I have on my bookshelf that I haven't read yet.
All's fair in love and war.
I got books upstairs that I can just bring and give to you. So we'll see if that works.
I'm curious what Noah, since this was Noah's week technically, I'm curious what he would have picked. But he doesn't come to these 8 a.m. shoots, unfortunately.
Yeah. Come on, Noah.
I do want to read that book, though, Pastor Bob.
Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years, rocking my peers, putting suckers in fear. All right. We're on to our next segment, which is the sermon summary and review and recap segment. So we've made it all the way to chapter 20 of the book of Revelation. So, Bob? You brought the word yesterday.
We did. We
and
have.
You had some bells. You had some props. You had us saying, lock him up, lock him up. There was a very engaging message. Can you give us a 60-second flyover of what is Revelation 20 all about?
So, Revelation 20, as I alluded to, is probably, it's hard to believe, but it is the most debated chapter in the book. At least the one that when people think about Revelation, it's probably the one that they think about. All the other stuff that we've been talking about is certainly debatable, but is not as well known as Revelation 20 because most people kind of build their eschatology on this one verse in Revelation 24. But it is the culmination of everything that's been leading to before we enter the new heavens and the new earth. And people argue about this idea of the millennial kingdom, this 1,000 years. When is that going to be? How is that going to play out? And then, of course, there is the final judgment, the great white throne judgment at the end of Revelation chapter 20. And after this, there's no more dead people. There's no more judgments. There's just we're going to be in the presence of God, and that's where Dave's going to take us next week. Hopefully, that's where you're going to take us. But we looked at there's four very clear sections in Revelation 20. So I listed them out this way. I just simply called it the chain, the rain, the fire, and the great white throne. And the argument that I made is that each of these sections give us a reason to have peace. So we tied it in with the peace candle and talked a little bit about how we lack peace in our world. So Revelation 20 is, I think, the hope and the joy and the peace and all of it wrapped up into one of what's coming in the future. And because we know that one day Jesus is going to come back and make all things right, and we'll be reigning with him, we can have peace today. So that was at least a quick summary of what we talked about, and lots to digest there. But that was the gist of it, Pastor Dave.
What an appropriate passage to have on the second week of Advent, the week of the peace candle. Everyone longs for world peace. Everyone's trying to figure out how we can have global peace.
That would have been another good illustration.
The Prince of Peace is going to return and bring in the golden age, the millennial kingdom. Mm-hmm. And so you took a view that was called the premillennial view.
Sure. Yeah, I did send Tim some charts, so we could go over the charts quickly. Just a reminder, we did do an Underground Sessions event on this, and this was probably the main discussion we had. Mm-hmm. So did you get those, Tim? Do you want to put those up?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let me just give the three main buckets that most people take. The first one is the premillennial bucket, and this is the view that Jesus is coming back, like Pastor Dave talked about last week, and that's going to occur before this future millennial reign. There's going to be a period of tribulation before that, and there's going to be a future millennial reign, and then we're going to enter the new heavens and the new earth. Now, as I mentioned, there's different stripes of premillennial. If you're a dispensational premillennial, this chart probably is unsatisfying to you because there's more things that happen in that view. If you're
The chart looks fuller.
It's much more filled out.
It's kind of like that Star Wars timeline.
Yes.
There's more to it.
Yes. So, but just for the sake of this, to save time, this is the premillennial position. That's the basic framework of it, the very simple basic framework. Secondly, there's the amillennial position, and in this view, people see Revelation 20 as a recapitulation of Revelation 12, and so they would say that this chain, this binding of Satan, it actually is happening at the first coming of Christ at the cross and the work that Jesus did there. And this millennium is this period right now of the saints reigning with Jesus in heaven. And then they have a very simple view of the future. Jesus will come back, there will be judgment, and then we're in the new heavens and the new earth. There's no this future millennial kingdom and all these different things that happen. And then there's the postmillennial view, which among some people is growing in popularity today. But they think that Jesus will come back, obviously, as the name suggests, post-millennialism. But a difference with the amillennial view is they think that we can build this Christianized world today, which is going to usher in this millennium before Jesus actually comes back and does the final judgment and the new heavens and the new earth. So those are the three main views. I probably interacted most with the premillennial and amillennial view. I as I mentioned, lean more premillennial, but I do have appreciation for all three. I think there's helpful aspects in all of them. And I did also mention another view called the New Creation Millennial View, which I've been exploring recently, but I'm not quite there yet. And that sort of is a combo of the amillennial and premillennial view, trying to take aspects of both and putting them together to make sense of Revelation 19 all the way through chapter 21, verse 8. So those are the main views.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
So, I mean, the postmillennial view, there's certain parables that Jesus told that would make us believe that perhaps the kingdom would continue to grow and grow and grow and eventually transform the entire world, like the parable of the mustard seed or the parable of the leaven in the dough. So there's, some scriptural basis for that. There's a great commission that we're given that, the postmillennialists takes very seriously. I think the weakness of the postmillennial view is that there's other scriptures that talk about how society will continue to grow more and more evil during these last days, like 2 Timothy 3 and other passages like that. So
well, I think
hard to reconcile.
Right. The thing that I've talked about with the postmillennial view that I find helpful is that sometimes in the premillennial position, people are so dour and sour on this world. Oh, things are just getting worse and terrible, and I'm just going to give up until Jesus comes back. And I would like to say that I'm a more hopeful premillennialist, that I do think that we are called to build the kingdom now and to usher it in as much as we can. And so, we do know that Jesus will come back. There is going to be, I think, probably a period of tribulation towards the end. But how do we live today? I think we live with hope and aspect and trying to bring Christ's kingdom and renew the world until he comes back and actually does that. So
I want to just share a couple scriptures about this binding of Satan thing, because a lot of times people who hear that just can't comprehend how anyone would believe Satan would be bound now, and kind of dismiss it in a way that maybe isn't taking into consideration what the New Testament says about the binding of Satan. So here's like 4 passages. Mark 3, Jesus says, I cannot cast out demons unless I first bind up the strong man. Very similar language, referring to Satan being bound up so that he can do his work of spiritual deliverance. There's another verse in John 12:31 where Jesus says, the prince of this world will be driven out, referring to through his death and resurrection. Okay, so that's something he's doing to the devil. 1 John 3:8, Jesus appears to destroy the devil's work. Okay, destroys the devil's work. That's something. Matthew 16, the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. So there's a resistance that the enemy can no longer have with the church. And finally, the one that you referred to in your sermon, Colossians 2, Christ disarms the powers and authorities on the cross. He does that.
Right.
So those who are amillennialists say this is an apocalyptic picture in Revelation chapter 20 describing the work of Christ's death, burial, and resurrection, the gospel, and how that has rendered Satan, in a sense, powerless to deceive the nations any longer. And we know that the nations are very much being evangelized. There's 2 billion Christians in the world today.
Yes.
And so that's their interpretation. You may disagree with it, and that's fine. I kind of disagree with it too. I'm kind of with you there, but I do think it's a view worth considering and wrestling with. I found
it's a compelling view.
I found a quote from an unknown amillennialist that I just really enjoyed. I shared it with my class yesterday, and here's what this person said: premillennialists are waiting for the millennium. Postmillennialists are working for the millennium, but we, the amillennials, are enjoying it.
I was going to say enjoying
now.
the millennium.
Yeah. So I thought that was a good, way of kind of summarizing the
there you go.
view.
Is that what you covered yesterday in the class?
Yeah. Yeah. So we talked a lot about that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
was my sermon unsatisfying to your class?
No, it was great.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
I think some
Can't
of them,
cover everything
some of them
in the-
definitely disagree with us.
Yeah, sure.
about
That's
that.
fine.
Sometimes I disagree with us about that, so that's okay.
I on any given day I could be convinced in different ways, but
If there's a
it's kinda leading.
scale of 1 to 10 of certainty about certain doctrines eschatologically, like I'm never getting above 4 or 5.
Yeah. I think
So there you go.
I think for me, the points that I made in Revelation 20 are the ones like I like the amillennial view, but I there's those things in Revelation 20 that I have a hard time getting over as far as what the text is saying. So
Yeah.
but maybe in the future I'll change my mind. We'll see.
Right. What's interesting is like the early church, and I've been studying this recently, we're largely premillennial. but they had other fish to fry. So in the early church, they were fighting against...
Like, is Jesus God?
Yeah, how do we talk about Jesus and the incarnation, the hypostatic
Right.
union, the Nicene
Right.
Creed, and like how do we talk about the Trinity and the Chalcedonian Creed and the Bible? How do we decide what books are in the Bible? That's the issues in the first 300 or 400 years of the church were big, and so when early church fathers did talk about the millennial kingdom, they were premillennial when they were not silent on it, and some of them were silent on it, but. It seems like there was a general consensus amongst early church fathers that there was this premillennial reign that Christ was going to bring. So I'm talking about Polycarp, Ignatius, Justin
Right.
Martyr. There's a statement in the Didache, the Shepherd of Hermes, Tertullian, and Irenaeus. So Irenaeus talks a lot about this. So early church fathers seem to be premillennial. And then Emperor Constantine became a Christian, and basically... the Roman Empire was slowly being converted. And that's when Augustine wrote his famous book, The City of God. He wasn't the first person to be amillennial. Origen talked about this a little bit too. But Augustine largely popularized this idea. And it looked like the globe was turning Christian. And so the amillennial view became really, really popular for like 1,000 years, and the premillennial view largely died out.
Still is probably the most popular view within church history, and maybe even the church at large today. If you count
the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, which maybe that's cheating, but yeah, it's the most popular view. But then after the Reformation, postmillennialism started to become popular, and then premillennialism had a resurgence.
Right.
But each view has its strengths and each view has its weaknesses.
Yeah.
But let's not lose the main thing. So those are some debated topics. When you got to the end of the message, you got to this part about the great white throne that everybody's agreed about. And that was a sobering scene there. Tell us a little bit about that scene and what's going on there, or did you want to talk about something before that with the rebellion?
Well, let me just mention a little bit about some of the debate with the Great White Throne. So the question is, who is it before that's the throne here, the throne at the end? So what I kind of said in the message is that everybody faces judgment, but there does seem to be this first resurrection that John talks about in chapter 4, verse 4 and 5. So the question is it believers and unbelievers that are before the Great White Throne? Is it just unbelievers? And there's different views on that. The one that I took was that at Jesus coming back, I think there's the dead in Christ are raised, and then we reign with him in the millennial kingdom. And some people will say, and I think maybe this is right, that there's some kind of judgment for believers there, and then we receive our reward, and we're obviously acquitted because of what Christ did. That's not explicitly stated in the text. So some people think that the Great White Throne judgment is actually when Jesus comes back, that's when that Great White Throne judgment happens, and it's for believers and for unbelievers, but same thing, believers are acquitted and everything like that. But what's interesting about verses 11 through 15 is that it does say all these books are going to be opened, everything you've done is written in these books, and what the totality of your life and your deeds is going to certify whether your name is written in this book of life. And I think what John is doing here is saying that those that are unbelievers, their works are showing that God is just in his condemnation and judgment of them. And at the end, they are thrown in the lake of fire to live apart from God and be tormented forever and ever and ever. And that's a very sobering thing. And this is a real, if there's a very clear passage here that if you don't know Jesus, you will live apart from him. And there's very serious consequences into eternity. So, yeah, it's certainly sobering. There's maybe more to be said about the rewards and punishments debate, but yeah, that's a very sobering thing, and I think that's pretty clear. Does it happen right when he comes back? Is there two different judgments? Some people think there's as many as four. I guess I tend today to lean towards there's one at the beginning, there's one at the end. And one at the end, Revelation 12, 11 to 15, is talking about the judgment of unbelievers at the end of the millennial age. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that?
I mean, as a Christian, are my sins going to be brought up when I stand before God in judgment? Is there going to be books listing all of my sins?
So, I could be wrong about this, but the way that I sort of pictured it, and this is why it's amazing, let's just say they are. You stand before Jesus, he lists off, like the book is open, he lists off everything you've done, your sins, and at the end he says, forgiven. And I think maybe that's part of what these tears are, is like, I did all this, how can you forgive me? And yet he still does. That it's the blood of Christ, it's the work of Christ that saves you, that covers you, that because of his work you receive this reward. That's at least the way that I conceive of it. Now maybe I'm not right, but I think that there's some validity in that. I don't know, have you thought about that at all?
I mean, I've always been taught that the Great White Throne was just for unbelievers, but I do think there's some sort of accounting that's testified to in other places. Like, I think it's 2 Corinthians, it says we all must stand before the judgment seat of Christ, all, like, including believers, and account for what we've done in the body. And then there's another passage in 1 Corinthians 3, which is a little bit hard to understand. It says, like,
The burning with fire.
burning and...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we went through this when we went through 1 Corinthians.
Yeah. So the well, I think it's actually, is it 1 Corinthians?
1
or 2
Corinthians chapter 3.
Yeah.
There's like
Okay.
a judgment through fire, and then wood, hay, stubble get burned up, and then gold, silver, precious stones endure.
Yeah. So okay. So maybe if we talk about this idea of eternal rewards and punishments, I personally I'm skeptical about this degree of reward concept. Actually, but one of my professors, Craig Blomberg, wrote a whole article exegeting all the different passages that are related to this, and many times you see in Scripture, I know in James, and I'm forgetting a few other, maybe Timothy, I'm forgetting the exact references, it talks about this crown of life that you receive. So the debate is, well, what exactly is that? And to me, I think the reward is to be with Christ, and then are there different degrees of reward? If there are, if you get different things to do forever and ever within the kingdom, I'm not sure I can't see that there would be jealousy in those things. Like, these are just things that you were gifted at, that you go and do, and that God has prepared for you for the coming kingdom. Now, in Revelation 20:11 to 15, I can see where there can be an argument made for different degrees of punishment because of this sort of kind of more lengthy accounting of what people have done, and they were judged based on what they had done. That's sort of what people do. The text that you reference, it does seem to say there is kind of this judgment thing for believers. We'll give an accounting. It's not here in Revelation, but it's in other passages in Paul. So it's hard to put all these things together in a way that is definitive. Some of it, at some level, is speculative. But those are at least the debate issues that are going on in those two ideas. Yeah.
I was always taught that there was some sort of reward, but I struggled with the jealousy piece. Like,
right.
When I graduated
well, the question
from college,
is, what is the reward, right? What is the reward?
Yeah. When I graduated from college, they had, like, awards ceremonies, so people were given different things. Like, you got the top GPA in your department or whatever. You and I were just talking about trophies. Like, there is some degree of jealousy that comes up in those moments for people who don't get them.
Right.
So how in heaven, when things are perfect, will we have those feelings mitigated? So you'd have to say that those are sinful proclivities, and those will be done away with the flesh, and then we'll just simply rejoice with those who are honored and worthy of honor. So yesterday in class, we talked about, like, 6 passages that talk about the second coming, and we did this table exercise, and we talked about what does this teach us, and then how does this apply to our lives. And we did some of the parables, like the parable of the talents, where people were given certain responsibilities, and they were held to account at the end of the age for what they did in the body, and rewarded differently. And then other parables, like the sheep and the goats, people were giving to the poor and caring for the needy,
right?
And Christ honored them, and then those who didn't care for those who are poor and needy, they were separated eternally. So there seems to be some, New Testament teaching that talks about behavior in the body as at least delineating or showing whether or not your faith in Christ was really genuine, right? So this is the way you display the fact that you genuinely are a believer through these good works.
Right.
But every passage we talked about, whether it was 2 Peter 3, which said what sort of people ought you to be, or these parables where we give an accounting at the end, or we talked about 1 John 3, that everyone who has this hope purifies himself, they all propel us toward godliness. They all propel us toward godly living. The second coming of Christ has an application to it. God doesn't reveal these things in his word and then tells us to look out the window. That's not the application. Look up and see if the drones are here. Look up and draw a chart about it. That's not the application. The application is, this is your destiny. This is who you're going to be. Live into who you're going to be. This is what God is calling you to. This is your future. So apply that to your life now and bring those realities to bear even now. So
Yeah. And the other passage that I know Blomberger brought up was there is the other parable. It's the parable of the vineyard, where you have the different workers going out, and people start working at different times, and yet they all kind of receive the same wage at the end. So that was at least one of his points about the sort of the equal playing field as it goes into eternity. Yeah, I haven't done a ton of work on 2 Corinthians 5:10, which is the one you're talking about. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ.
the bema.
Right. So that each one may receive what is due for what he has done in the body, whether good or evil.
Right.
So that's sort of the passage you have to wrestle with on
Right.
that. But in Revelation, it's not really there. You have to
That's not the
go to
bema
Paul to kind of look at that. So
Right.
yeah.
And the bema seat
Yeah.
was a technical term used
Right.
in the Olympic Games to, do judgments about rewards for the athletes there.
Yeah.
So
it's a sort of this is where the systematic theology comes in. You're looking at what the whole Bible says about these different doctrines. So anyway,
so final thoughts about Revelation chapter 20. Anything else you wanted to add before we move on?
I mean, I just, it's a wonderful passage, and I do think that for me, it does give hope that one day Christ will come. I think he'll bring his kingdom. There's a great reward of being with him. And I should have brought the bells down. I could have rung them. But I do think, if you listen for those bells in the distance and tell people about Jesus and live for the kingdom.
Tim had some bells going on in the sound system.
Oh, that was Tim. Thank you for that.
How
That
did
was
you
a
do
wonderful
that, Tim?
addition.
That was like chimes during the middle
We
of the sermon.
actually, we found a local church that had some bells, and we had them ring. No, we pulled them in on the soundboard.
That was cool.
Yeah, shout out to Steve Tossi making that happen. Did a great job. Up for prop of the year, by the way, Bob. The bells as a whole.
Hey, it's coming at Christmas
Late
time.
submission. We're like 2 weeks
we're
away.
getting close.
2 weeks away from the unveiling.
All right.
No pun intended.
Tim and I were reminiscing about the Little House on the Prairie program where they made they made the bell, and they
Tinker's
they
Toys
formed it and hung it up, and they were ringing it for school and for church. I think the same building was the schoolhouse and the church house, right, Tim?
Yes.
Tim, Little House on the Prairie, man.
Miss Beadle, the school teacher,
Yes, Mrs. Beadle.
and her lemon verbena perfume.
Wow. Oh, that is an obscure fact.
Yeah, you can quiz me, man. Shout out to my mom for driving in Little House of the Prairie knowledge into my head for the first 17 years of my life.
There you go.
I'm going to tie this together. All right. So, Little House on the Prairie, the way they
All
used to
right.
create sitcoms, there was an arc. And it was, a scene was set, characters were there, then there was some sort of tension that was built, there's some sort of problem, and then there was some sort of climactic scene, and then by the end of the show there was a resolution of the problem, along with some sort of moral story. You left the show feeling like you learned some sort of deep application, but the story had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Very satisfying. You compare that to some kind of Netflix shows that just have cliffhanger after cliffhanger after cliffhanger. They never resolve. Sometimes the show
always
gets
want you to keep
canceled.
coming
and you're
back,
like, the
right?
show got canceled before you're going to resolve the problem. That's not right. I think the human heart is designed for the regular story arc that has a beginning, middle, and an end. The book of Revelation is telling us this is where we're headed. There's going to be a resolution at the
Yeah.
end. This is what your soul longs for, your heart longs for. There's a golden age. It's coming, and God is going to wrap up the story. History is linear.
There will be a resolution.
It's not a never-ending Netflix story with cliffhanger after cliffhanger after cliffhanger that's like cyclical. There is an end, and we're headed somewhere, and it's the presence of God.
Yeah.
So Little House
Well,
on the Prairie is a little microcosm of
and
the good story.
You're taking us to the ultimate resolution this upcoming week, the Joy Week.
Lord
We're going to
willing.
get in the new heavens and the new earth.
Going to the new creation, and
All
it's
right.
going to be great. So
No more judgment. No more of this craziness we've been dealing with, right?
no, although there is this one verse about outside are the dogs, and it's like a little bit of harsh language there, but mostly it's good news.
Okay.
So
Mostly.
yeah. All right. Hey Tim, are we
Amen.
are we sprinting today
We are.
theologically? Okay.
Onward, Christian soldiers. Here we go.
All right.
So I have a theology sprint, but it's got 2 parts. So we'll answer the first part, and then I have something fun for part 2, which we might bring back in future episodes. So today's theology sprint is, briefly, because it's a sprint, explain the debate between the predestination and the free will view of salvation.
I mean, you just did a whole paper on that. I feel like he thought about you.
Oh my gosh. So
Can you summarize 12 pages in one?
it came out to be 20 pages. So the ladies' Bible study is going to be studying Ephesians in January, which is really exciting. It's going to be a great study. And so a lot of concepts come up in Ephesians chapter 1 about predestination, election, that kind of thing. And so that led Kim and I to have a discussion about, is there something we can do to equip the leaders in case they get questions during the study? So I began to kind of compile all of my notes about this topic: Augustinianism, Pelagianism, Calvinism, Arminianism, the debate that happened several different times throughout church history of, God's sovereignty versus man's free will. The basic binary choice that you have there is like libertarian free will versus compatibilistic free will. Those are the 2 different major views. So libertarian free will is that humans have the ability to make genuinely free choices, unconstrained by external causes and divine predetermination. Compatibilistic free will says human free will is compatible with divine sovereignty and determinism. We humans act freely according to our desires and inclinations, but those desires are at times determined by prior causes, including God's ordination. So those are the 2 sort of major views in this. And if you want to learn more, I have a 20-page PDF that explains all of the different nuances
That's very good.
of the free
That's
will
very
debate.
good. Yeah.
Tim, I don't know. There's a
No, that's
really
good.
long answer to that question.
So
I'm happy to give you this PDF. You can post it on the YouTube page if you want.
give me a link to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So part 2, there's a cultural phenomenon that's running through the internet right now, and it's called tier lists. And we've kind of done this before, but I think we're going to keep a running tier list of Christian issues. So I have up here is the tier
I
list.
thought you were talking about like crying right now.
No. Like, so we have up here is our tier list, and on the bottom is the free will versus predestination. S being the most important issues that we cannot budge on, and D being we don't even have to care about these if we really don't want to. Where would you guys put free will versus predestination on this tier list?
I need a better description of the 5 categories.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
S is like
S is
you
like
have
it's-
to believe
it-
this to be a Christian.
Yes, S is you have to believe this to be a Christian.
Okay.
D is like, I don't know, the bottom of the barrel. Like, I don't know, do we need to sing hymns every
Yeah.
Sunday on church?
I
kind of thing?
wouldn't put it in S or D, but it's somewhere in the middle here. So could you describe A, B, and C?
A is like a really important. Like it's. I would say, I don't know. Maybe we need to whittle this down because you guys do it in like 3 or 4. So it's just the cultural phenomenon. They add like the S, A, B, C, D. So B would be just like a middle. Like, yeah, like we can have. I don't know. Like it's kind of in the middle of an issue. C is, in between B and D. That's fairly obvious.
I'd probably put it somewhere around A or B. I mean, the reality is, in terms of practical importance and how you live your life, I think you're called to live in obedience to God and pursue Him, and how that works. Some of this is working out itself behind the scenes, but it is an important thing that you should wrestle with and come to an agreement and come to a decision about. And it can, at some level, have some practical play out. So I don't know, where would you put it?
I'll give you a similar answer with a little bit of a caveat in that there are some ways to answer the free will predestination debate that are not okay. And like, if you answer it this way, you've
That's
now
good.
entered into a territory that's like not Christian. So
Yep.
Pelagianism is the view that our human will is not necessarily depraved by nature, and that we have some inherent goodness, and that Christ was just merely a moral example. That's not Christian orthodoxy. Or another view that I talked about in the paper that Bob said you should give a sharper critique about this than I did in the paper was
The initial one,
open
yeah.
theism. Not
Yeah.
the final version, but I simply laid it out as a view, and I wasn't as sharp with my criticisms, and you
Which open theism.
gently rebuked me to say, Dave, this is not an option. You should
I don't
make
think
sure
it is.
this is
It's
clear
the
that-
idea that God doesn't know the future.
Yeah.
So He kind of is reacting to our choices.
Right.
In open theism, which I don't think is a view that people can hold.
Which is
Yeah.
a way of solving the free will sovereignty of God debate.
Right.
That's not okay. So most of the time you're going to fall within some sort of orthodox position. Calvinism, Arminianism, 4-point Calvinism, 5-point Calvinism. Those are all debatable positions.
Yeah.
But you can fall off the wagon completely, Tim, and get off the Christian train and get on some other train where God no longer has the attributes that are revealed in Scripture. Those are not okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
So
Good.
Yeah,
Forgot
so
about
it kind of
those.
sounds
That's
like
good.
an A or a B here. So where do we want to definitively land this?
I'll just say I would put it in the A category.
All
A
right.
category.
Yeah.
All right,
it
we'll
there.
drag it up to the A.
Oh, look at this live.
Look at
We
this.
can
He's
do it
got-
live. I think
Wow.
we will come back to
He
this.
created a little badge there too.
Oh,
Yeah,
my word.
I think we hold
He
on to
gave
this.
this some thought, man.
We can have some fun with this.
Who are those two guys?
I think it's Calvin and
Arminius.
Arminius.
and
Jacob
Arminius.
Arminius.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's fine. We can put them there.
Cool.
They're both.
It was
yeah.
just a Google image
Which
search.
some of the modern Calvinism stuff, Calvin didn't even believe. He was much more, I think, in the Augustinian camp. I think you made that clear in your paper.
Good question, Tim. So thanks for the sprint. I don't know if that was a sprint, but Body Life, we got
All
a
right.
couple announcements, right?
First, we have a shout out. If you want to give a shout out, Pastor Dave.
I do. Hey, congratulations to our Stephen Minister graduates. We had a great commissioning yesterday. Stephen Ministry is a one-to-one lay caring ministry in our congregation where people commit to go side by side with someone going through a grief or a period of loss in their lives. We had added to our team 7 new wonderful Stephen ministers who just completed 50 hours worth of training this year. Great job, guys. They are ready to get to work. So let us know if you're interested in having a Stephen minister. We want to come alongside of you if that can be a help to you. So thank you for that reminder there, Tim. Also, Bob, it's the week.
This is the week,
I'm
and
so
I expect
pumped.
to see you there. Tim did a wonderful video on social media. Our City Relief packing party is this Saturday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. We're going to feed you. City Relief, I think Sydney's coming to talk about their ministry, and then we're going to pack, I think Christy said, 600 kits. So you need to come and bring your packing pants.
If you haven't signed up
Hands.
yet, what are
And
you
go
waiting
and-
for?
Yeah, go and sign up because we need to know how much food we need to get. So if you don't want to be hungry, put your name on the list.
Finally,
It is the season.
Christmas
Having
Eve is coming, my friends.
2 identical wonderful services on Christmas Eve, December 24th. Please come, 4 o'clock or 5:30. We hope that you'll make this part of your Christmas plans this year to worship the King together. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining our show today. Don't forget to celebrate properly with Reese's. Have a great day.
Not a
Thanks for
sponsor.
watching Behind the Pulpit. God bless you guys.